second chance in the game.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me here and this third installment. Again, thank you so much to Chief Pigskin for allowing me the opportunity to come and just share some of the things that I've learned. Guys, this is one topic that I'm very excited about, and gosh, I hope I can do it justice, but just what I would consider kind of the new frontier in coaching. You know, we as coaches are always looking for an edge. We're always looking for something that's going to allow us, honestly, to win more games, right? But in the end, I think even just, you know, at a deeper level to impact kids more, to make a difference in their life, you know, and to really make an impact beyond the field. And so, guys, with that, kind of this new frontier, kind of the three things, and you can kind of see from this diagram on the screen, we're just looking for character education, leadership skills training, and mental training. And these are things that I joked in another session, you know, weightlifting was kind of the big thing in the 90s and the early 2000s. If you were doing weightlifting and hitting it really hard in the weight room, maybe you were getting an advantage, right? But by now, that's not true anymore. You know, definitely just with the use of social media and different platforms out there, weightlifting is what everyone's doing, right? And you're kind of just doing what everyone else is doing. And so to me, you've got to figure out what is that new thing. And I would say that these three and kind of the mixture of these three is the new frontier. It is the new thing that teams need to be doing to gain the advantage. You're seeing this sometimes at the elite level, the professional level, the collegiate level, and it needs to infiltrate its way down into the high school ranks. So again, just using character, leadership, and mental skills for your football program, and hopefully you can get something out of this as a takeaway. Just a little bit about me, just so you understand where I'm coming from. Guys, I've been a head football coach, head track coach, head strength and conditioning coach. I've been a head coach for 10 years, been coaching, I'll be going on my 16th year of coaching, my 11th year as a head coach. But I think the thing is, I chose to coach because I wanted to impact kids. And I really did, and I think I need to be honest with you up front. I mean, yes, do I love X's and O's? Totally. Do I believe that football is a great game and it teaches a lot of life skills? Yes. But man, I wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. Just like my high school coach, Art Hill, had made an impact in my life, I wanted to do the same thing. And so you can see my coaching philosophy there, right? To love and motivate young athletes, to impact their lives towards a higher calling, and to model and teach them to do right, do their best, and consider others in all situations. I challenge you to write down your own, right? Again, the FCA 3D coaching, they talk a lot about that. Joe Ehrman talks a lot about that. But just figuring out what is your coaching philosophy, because in the end, that'll help figure out, does this stuff that I'm about to talk about, does it play a part in kind of what you're looking to do? Because that is key. You have to kind of know what is your background there. For me, to start with character education, and so again, guys, I could talk about each of these and give you examples literally for hours. And by all means, guys, my contact information will be here at the end. I'll be more than happy to share with you on Google Drive different examples of character meetings I've done. Guys, if you don't feel comfortable with this, and there are programs out there, right? You can find different companies out there. They offer kind of, you know, their curriculum and their stuff. But just, again, figuring out what can you do to help increase the character of your team is going to be huge. One of the big questions that I think it's important that you look at is, why do your players play on your team? And I mentioned this before, but to me, it was one of the most refreshing things that I came to understand is that players on my team, most of them do not love football as much as I do. Maybe none of them. And I think that's really important, because I think a lot of times I would just get frustrated as a young coach on why kids weren't doing what I wanted them to do. Right? Why weren't they showing up to the weight room like I wanted them to do? Why weren't they, why were they missing a day at camp because of an activity? What was it? And I just came to realize that, you know what? They don't love football as much as me, right? They don't. And that's okay, right? Because there are some that do, and they're the easy ones to coach, right? Those kids normally aren't very difficult to coach. But I have to figure out how to build relationships, how to get to know the other kids, the majority of the kids that don't love football as much as I do. And by building that relationship, now I can go and invest in their life. Remember, football can make an impact in lives beyond the field. It won't totally do it on its own, though. And that's a key point that I mentioned later. So the question is, why is character education important, right? Why will it matter? Well, and I'm going to talk through some of these down here at the bottom, but in reality, think about the kid that you trust with the football, 4th and goal in a state championship game, right? Yes. Do you want an athletic kid to carry the football? Definitely, right? But if I have two kids that are equally athletic, right? They have equal athletic ability, man, I want the kid who has the higher character, who does things right more often, right? That's the kid that I trust, right? That foxhole analogy. Who do you trust in the foxhole? Man, I want to trust the kid who has higher character. I do. And that's who I want on my team. And so I'm not saying that there's some way that you can magically make all kids have great character, but I think we can do things that can help progress them on that spectrum to help them realize that they can, in theory, have a little bit higher character and hopefully be able to perform well for you on the football field as well. I think the interesting thing about football and about sport is it might be the only place they're actually getting character education. You know, that's not something that's always taught in class. We do a lot of things and do a great job of teaching reading, writing, arithmetic kind of things. But again, we don't do a lot of things with character, and we like to think that it's taught in the home or maybe in the church, but who knows? We don't really know what that looks like. I think the other thing is you have to battle the opposite messages, right? We live in a really me-centered culture, right? Our media really, we literally have a fear of missing out, right? We worry about missing out on things because we're so consumed by, right, our culture. Kids take, you're talking 14 plus selfies a day, as some of the research says. So again, you have to figure out something that's going to help them just understand a little bit more about life and about how their life impacts other people. I think there's a huge long-term impact that can be there, as it says there. And again, just the more you can help kids with their character. I think the other thing is your players are leaders in schools, right? So if your school has kind of an interesting culture or climate, right, what is the character of its leaders, its football players? Because if it's not high, I'm guessing the school isn't either. And there could be an issue there, definitely a butting of heads with administration or teachers and your players. Again, character education is happening to your athletes. You've got to figure out who's teaching it and whether to partner or fight against it. And that's really key, right? Again, what is the character? And you can impact that, and that is important to understand. Here are some things. I've given you 8 points here. Just some things to discuss. I've talked about these before, but I have examples that I can always show you if you want. One, you've got to figure out what is the component going to look like. Is it the foundation of your program or is it just one piece of the puzzle? I would encourage that to become a foundation. I think you do that because it's more prevention-based instead of reactionary. A lot of times early on, right, I could see that we were struggling maybe, to block for our teammates, right? And so we would talk about, right, just doing the right thing or, right, being others focused or sacrificing. And I would just randomly pick and choose things, kind of like a grab bag. But I found that the best way is to have something that is literally for the entire season or for your program. Again, you can see this. I did the seasonal acronym, right? So one that we've used before is deserve to win, right? Where literally each letter, I would do something I would talk about each week. So D might be determination, E might be empathy, S might be service. And I would have that set up, and we would go back to that every week as we introduced the theme. The newest thing is that, honestly, that's become really popular is just kind of those core values, right? You have a lot of people out there talking about core values, having core values of your program. I think that's great. But again, if you have core values, you need to talk about your core values all the time. You can't just have core values, put them as a poster on your wall and expect that that's somehow going to impact players. You have to constantly going back and talking about this. And I think that's the thing about character education, about some things we're going to talk about. A lot of times, people just don't, is it worth it, right? Is it worth the investment of talking about it all the time? And I would tell you that it does. And you might not see it immediately, right? You might just be planting seeds, but I promise the investment is really worth it. I've developed a weekly character plan. Again, I think football is really conducive to having a weekly character plan because of just the normalcy of the schedule, right? You have a game on a Friday or Saturday. You're practicing basically Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday for that game. And so you have just kind of this structure that allows you, hey, Monday, we're going to introduce this theme. We're going to discuss it. We're going to define it. Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to quote it. We're going to highlight examples. We're going to discuss it, right? And I'm telling you, there's so much power in spotlighting the kids who are doing that. And I have my coaches look for it. I have seniors look for it. But just allowing those people to spotlight those people that they're seeing demonstrate that character, that word, that theme that we're looking for. Thursday, we're going to have a character meeting, right? I think it's important. And again, I think however you want to do this is fine. I've had character meetings where I did the whole team. We had 30 guys on the team. I've had 90 players on the team, and we did it by grades. It doesn't matter, whatever works for you and works for the people that you have that can run that. If you as a head coach don't feel comfortable with that, and maybe empower one of your assistants to run that. But you need to be at that meeting, right? Please understand, you need to be at that meeting. Don't go take care of something else, because again, it's got to be important for you to do that. If you're an assistant coach and this is a way you think you can fit into the program, talk to your coach about it. But I think it's key. On Friday, we're going to review the theme. Saturday, the note here is dads with donuts. So one thing that I did is I would actually empower a dad in the community that I thought was a high character man, and he would bring in donuts for us on Saturday practices. And I would tell him what our theme was, and he would talk to the guys on Saturday about that theme and how he saw that theme being played out in our game on Friday night. Again, just a great way to kind of bookend it by introducing it on a Monday and bookending it then on that Saturday or the day after our game was really important. Some other fun things that we've done, guys, is we always do a Mother's Game. So again, in that seasonal acronym that you see up here, one of these weeks, I would have us talk about our moms. And this is a really neat thing. I got this from a college coach many years ago, but we would dedicate a game to our moms. And I've done this in multiple schools. I've had other coaches do this, and this is a huge hit. If there's one thing you can take away and literally do next year, it's phenomenal. We dedicate the games to our moms. So what we'll do is, in the beginning of the week, we introduce the theme, all right? And we talk about moms and the role of moms. And each day at practice, I'll have coaches or different coaches talk about their moms and the role that their mom played in their own life. Now, oddly enough, naturally you might be thinking, well, I wonder if everyone didn't have a mom, or maybe the mom wasn't a great mom. This is important because, again, sometimes that's part of the process, right? They'll maybe talk about a grandmother or an aunt, right? Because maybe their mom has passed away or wasn't present. Also, we've had some coaches who are very honest that their mom wasn't just a great mother. And again, guys, you have players on your team that's that way too. So allowing those coaches to be vulnerable in that way is huge. I tell the coaches ahead of time so they're not totally freaked out by it, but it's just a huge thing that you can do. On Thursdays then, during our character meeting, we'll talk a little bit about moms, but then the gentlemen write letters to their mom. And that's kind of their exit slip to be able to go to the game. They have to turn in the letter to me, and then I put it in an envelope, right? Then on the day of the game, I'll have bought flowers, and then the players and their moms will go and walk to the field together, and the players will escort their mom to the field. Now, naturally, you need to make sure you have somebody kind of who knows the community a little bit to make sure that all the moms are there. My wife normally helps me out by getting all the moms in numerical order so the players can walk them. And you also need to make sure that you have somebody ready to stand in. My wife has stood in for somebody whose mom maybe wasn't able to show up, wasn't able to walk. My own mother has come and stood in with players as well. But again, guys, just an awesome opportunity to communicate and talk through that. Then as they walk through the field, the player hands the letter and the flower to their mom. They give them a hug, a kiss. The players go run on and play the game, and the moms go up in the stands. I think one of the things that people always ask is, man, isn't that a huge distraction? I've done this for over 10 years. I've never lost a Mother's Game. Now, maybe that's just really good scheduling on my part. I don't know. But I think in the end, guys, it's just a great way to just again, tell our kids it's not just about football. It's about something bigger. I think as well, just the more you do this, the better it'll get. I remember one of the first years I did this, I had a young man literally photocopy his face and write, "Love you, Mom," and put it in an envelope. Now, that's probably not as deep as I was hoping for that letter, but again, it was his basic one. He did that as a freshman. By the time he was a senior, he wrote a really nice letter to his mom. I have moms comment every year that they save those letters, and those letters are huge keepsakes for them. So again, huge thing, easy message about being something bigger than yourself, about the idea of service, empathy, that you want a part of your program. Another thing we do is that father-son jersey night. And again, this is one that I've gotten from other organizations and just borrowed and adapted. But we do this just for our seniors. And so the father-son jersey night is we will, maybe about a month before, when we're going to do it, before senior night, before that senior night team dinner, we will bring them, meet with the senior dads and explain to them, hey, you're going to have an opportunity in about a month to talk to your son or talk about this young person in your life and tell them how much you love them and how proud you are of them. From there, we give them kind of a little bit of format. Here's some things to help guide you. It definitely isn't what you have to say, but to guide you. And then that night after the team dinner, the seniors and their dads or dad-like figures will come and sit in a circle in the locker room. We'll have all the jerseys on a table in front. I'll introduce the event. I'll explain why it's so important. And then from there, I'll call dads and have them come up and talk about their sons. I'll admit, man, this was, for me, was really scary at first, but every time that I've done it, it has been outstanding. And most of the time, I'm crying by the end, just hearing these dads talk how much they love their sons. Now, naturally, yes, you're going to have some people that don't have dads, and I've had coaches who are ready to stand in and speak about players and how much they love and care about them. You also have stepdads maybe, and I've had brothers come in, and I've had stepdads and also real biological dads talk about their son. But again, let it happen organically, but it is a really awesome experience and just something that those kids will remember forever. Interesting note, I did have one young man whose dad butchered it, right? He did a really bad job. He wasn't prepared. He got up there, he got really nervous, and he really messed it up. I felt terrible for this young man. And I remember calling the young man in early the next morning and asking him, I said, Ethan, man, what did you think of that? And he goes, you know what, Coach, I knew my dad would mess that up. He doesn't do really well in those things. And I told him, I said, you know what, I'm really sorry that happened, Ethan. I never intended it to be like that. And he said, it's okay, Coach. And I said, Ethan, did you learn anything from this experience? And guys, this is why you do these things. He said, Coach, I know that if I ever have an opportunity to tell my future children how much I love them, I'm going to do it well. And right then and there, it was worth it. Even though he did go through a little bit of a painful experience, he learned something huge from that. And that's why we do those things. Service opportunities, you can't do enough. You can't give enough back to your communities. Guys, again, for me, we do a community cleanup. That's a specific day that we give up a summer camp where we go and clean up the community. We send out flyers and people will put in job requests and we'll go and do that. That's huge. We've gone up and helped out at camps. There's a camp that we've gone to locally called Camp Quality. It's for young people who and their siblings who have cancer, and we've gone and helped out and just cleaned up and been janitors for that. But whatever you can do. But again, finding places that you can go and serve the community is huge. Heck, just going around your campus and cleaning up is awesome. But yeah, I think also for my coaches out there, you need to figure out how to ground yourself, right? Whether that's Inside Out Coaching, which is a great book, 3D coaching, something that's going to help remind you why this is important. Because you and I know, man, when we get in the middle of the season and we're worried about wins and losses and if we're going to make the playoffs and if Johnny's really hurt or whatever, it becomes challenging. But the more you can ground yourself and know, hey, why am I doing this? Go back to that coaching philosophy and what you're all about, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to stick with that character education that's so important. Leadership training. Biggest thing here, guys, is during losing seasons, I've been so frustrated at the lack of leadership and just buy-in from senior classes. And I've been really blessed. I haven't had many losing seasons, but the most recent one, that was just it, right? There wasn't great leadership. It wasn't great buy-in from that senior class, and just some injuries and whatnot. And just I didn't do a great job empowering those kids. And that's what I realized. And it was my fault. I should have done a better job. So you have to find a way to maximize senior and other leaders on the team. You have to figure out how to maximize their potential for that. I think also it's important, you can't assume that your best players will be your best leaders. Now, you and I know just a great equation. If your best players are your best leaders and they have the highest character, your team's normally going to do pretty good. But again, you've got to figure out how to help those guys step into those roles. Leadership training really is the answer for that. I think the thing that's so important, and a great story I heard once, was a young man had just been elected captain, right? And the next day, it was the beginning of the season, he was just elected captain, and he literally, man, the next morning, the head coach heard a knock at his door. And the head coach opened the door, and here it was, this young man. And the young man was like, Coach. And the coach was like, Johnny, what's up? Why are you here? It's early in the morning. He goes, Coach, I was just elected captain, but I don't know how to lead. And I think that we see that a lot, right? We see people that we've given titles to, but they're not sure how to do it. And again, you've got to give them a ground to practice that and figure that out. And that's why leadership training is so important. For me, this literally begins the first day after their junior season for my seniors. So this is kind of an interesting thing. I might be one of the only people in the world that does this, but when the season is over, we have one more practice. So I just got this idea from my wife. She's a professional counselor, and I just always knew that at the end of the season, right, a lot of people, we just turn in our equipment, right? We might meet real quick and talk about when we're going to turn in the equipment and when the banquet is, but that was it. And I just never felt like that was enough. I didn't feel like we debriefed enough of what was going on. And so we have one more practice. So whenever our season ends, whether playing in a state championship game, which I've done that, or literally losing in the first round of districts, right, we're going to have one more practice. I tell them ahead of time. So in the middle of the season, I remind them and I remind the parents, we're going to do this. So there's winter sports, no. But what we do is when that season is over, right, when our season's over, we have one more practice. The kids come in, we do it normally like we do. We talk through our goals and how we did. We discuss how we did on the character piece, etc. I will go through some basic announcements about, when the banquet is, how we're going to turn in equipment, all of that things. But from there, we go and we break up by position and we do top 10 lists. Kind of fun. We do top 10 either best memories from practice, best memories from the games, or best memories or highlights from this season. And then I normally let my defensive guys do that. My D-line does one, my linebackers do another, and my defensive backs do a third. And the kids have a lot of fun, right? It provides them an opportunity just to reminisce, laugh, joke. From there, we'll go and we do a walk. We do our final walk out to the field. Now, depending where you practice, I used to do a final walk at the practice field, and a final walk at the game field. Now with turf and stuff, a lot of people practice and play in the same place. But again, we do one final walk. And so we will walk out there, and the seniors will lead the way. And I go and I tell those kids, hey, just walk the field, right? For some of you, this is your last time. For some of you, made some great memories here. For some of you, maybe you want to make promises to yourself about what you're going to do better. And I just let them walk the field. After that, we'll meet up. All right, we'll get a breakdown, and then my juniors will now come to the front, and they will lead us back into the locker room one final time for that season. And so that's kind of the kickoff, right, to that kind of leadership training there. From there, this has been a transition for me. My first year ever doing this, my seniors and I met one time. Now, seniors and I will meet monthly. Like, we will literally meet every month, normally on a Sunday or a Monday holiday in the evening. We'll just meet. I normally provide food. I think that's really important to get them there. But again, we'll have a curriculum and a material that we work through. Also, now I do a Unity Council. A Unity Council would be up-and-coming leaders. So these will be freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. And some of my big-time senior leaders, those guys will meet. So you're talking a small group. It's not very big, maybe 10 to 12, 15, depending on how big your team is. But these guys will meet. Normally, they're going to meet for a much shorter period. And you can see January through March there. We meet every 2 weeks. And they're going to have a very small curriculum to kind of talk through. And these are guys you're training up, right? I think it's important that you do a culmination of training. I think we need to have something that culminates it to tell these seniors, hey, you're now leaders. This is now your time. When we do a senior sleepover at my house, it's a lot of fun. We do a lot of different activities, team building stuff, a lot of cool things with that. But again, there needs to be some type of culmination that, hey, this is your team now, right? And as you're going out into this, you need to understand that this is it now. You, all right, the seniors, and I as the head coach are going to work together now to go make this a great season. With our Unity Council, we normally do some type of community service event to kind of kick that or to finish that and culminate that off and say, hey, this is it, right? You are now, man, big time here. This is kind of the culmination of all your training. Now we got to go put that into action. The other thing that's important to know is the opportunities to practice. Again, just like I told you in that story, right? That captain goes to this coach and says, Coach, I'm elected captain. Now how do I lead? I think it's important you provide them opportunities for that. Whether that's breakdowns, right? Like, hey, let them do the breakdown, right? There were times I wasn't always sure how it was said, but there were times I'd say, all right, hey, captains, you got the breakdown. Or, you know what, Johnny, you got the breakdown today. And we would just walk away as coaches and let that young man have his 30 seconds to speak to that team. Team competitions, I think, are key. You'll see a lot of that with the weight room, right, where you break them up into smaller teams and let them compete and whatever works. But I think those are also important. They have their place. I think, again, like I said, let them talk to the team. I've let guys get up and have a chance to just speak in front of the team. I found that normally when we come in before a game, right, so we've just done our pregame warm-up. We come in. I normally will let leaders have 5 minutes to talk to the team. While the coaches go into the locker room and our coach's office and we get a few things taken care of, we let those leaders talk to the team. And then finally in the weight room, I think, again, I've let the coaches back away a little bit, and we're still there to supervise, but I'll let my seniors or my leaders lead the workouts or put them in charge of like a group of 4 guys, and they're going to lead that workout with those guys. When you do those, don't be afraid to debrief how that went, though, right? Don't be afraid to sit down and ask them, hey, how did that go, right? Were you prepared? Are you not prepared? And asking them questions. I think that's really important to make sure that those guys feel comfortable with that. I'm also big on allowing my seniors and my leaders to set goals and vision for the season. I think that's really important. Again, I want to know, what do they think what can we accomplish this season? What is their vision? What do they want to see us do? And again, the more you have great dialogue there, the better it's going to be. Now, I have to guide them a little bit. You'd be surprised sometimes goal setting is not something that kids do a great job of on their own. But again, I'm going to sit there and make sure that, hey, how's everything working? What do you think it looks like for us? Where are we going, etc. Another thing we always want to practice is servant leadership. Leaders eat last. It's funny how this is challenging for some kids, but we will, again, try to encourage our leaders, our seniors, to not eat first. Right? Now, some kids are going to struggle with this, right? They just cannot handle it. But I was so impressed this year, especially, I had a couple seniors that every time, right, they would eat last. And I don't know, again, if you've ever seen this in the military, but the officers eat last, right? I mean, this is where the concept comes from, right? The enlisted men or some of the lower-ranking servicemen, they're the ones who eat first, and the officers eat last. And I think it's also important as a head coach, I normally will always try to eat last. I try to let my players eat first. And they might never notice that, but this year was fun because I had some seniors who picked up on that, and they always ate last as well. But I think it's just those little things, man, just showing that leadership and that servant leadership and modeling that behavior, right? I've also had seniors who will pick up, clean up the field, right? Normally we give that to the lower end, the young kids, but I'll have seniors who help do that as well. How you focus your captain selection, I think, is key too. There's a lot of different ways on this. You know, the tradition, you have the team vote for it. I've had some people vote for it weekly. One of the things that I've done is they have to apply for it, right? So they actually have to apply. They have to write a speech. They have to give the speech to the team, and then the team actually will ask them interview questions as well as coaches. And, you know, it takes some time, right? So you got to be willing to give up some time. But it's been really interesting to hear just the questions that the players actually ask each other about, hey, you weren't at weightlifting. Why should we vote for you as a captain? And I think that's really powerful. I mean, I think that brings a lot to that and just really allows those young men to say, interesting, do I really want this position? Because again, you and I know you don't want to have a captain or a leader that isn't your guy, right? He's one of those guys that really bought into what you're doing. The last one here is this idea of banquet focus, all right? And again, how do you focus your banquet is so key. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm definitely not saying there's a right or wrong one. But again, how do you focus your banquet? Do you allow some of those seniors to talk at the banquet? Do you allow some of your leaders to talk at the banquet? Or is it something that the coach has to talk? Again, this is a tough one, right? Because if you're a control person, letting those seniors get up and talk could be tough. But again, empowering those young men, right, to be involved in that banquet can be really powerful and part of that leadership training. Because again, you're selling a vision for your younger players to say, hey, I want to do that, right? I want to be a part of that. So again, that leadership training piece is so key. Guys, you can see based on this diagram, right, this idea, guys, you got character education, right? We're going to try to impact, elevate the quality of oneself, their decision making, their awareness, etc. Leadership, right, position, function, group, right, try to help them out. Guys, the more mastery that a young person has of their character and their leadership, right, man, the more that they're going to have an impact on the team, the better their athlete they're going to be for you. Right? And that's the key. That's why it's so important. That's why it is the new frontier. Because again, this idea, hey, character education, it's important, right? It's an integral part, piece, foundation of what you're doing. Leadership, it is important because you need people helping you lead. You can't be out there by yourself, right? And the more you can get young athletes to figure this out and be on the same page with this, and the more they can grow in these areas, the better it's going to help. Other strategies, guys, that I've enjoyed doing, I've just stopped practice before to do a demonstration. So one of them that I did was a tug of war. So I just brought a rope out during a water break, and I took our varsity offensive line, right? Or excuse me, I took our varsity offense, all 11 guys, and put them on one end. And I took 11 of our freshmen on the other end, and I had them pull on the rope, right? And naturally, the varsity offense, all 11 of those guys, they won the tug of war pretty easily. But then I took one man away, all right? I took one of them away. I took one of our linemen away. And I then went 11 freshmen, right, on our 10 varsity offensive players, right? And from that, as you might guess, those 11 freshmen won, right? And I said, guys, what's the takeaway point here? And you have some people say, well, we got strong freshmen. Well, it might be true. Or, you know, Johnny, the guy you removed is really strong. I said, yeah, that might be true too. But what does it show you about our offense if we're not all pulling on the rope at the same time on that play? And they said, oh, man, yeah, if one of us doesn't do our job, the play doesn't work. And that's it. Now, as a coach, you might say, well, what would happen if the 10 guys would have won? I'd had to pull another guy away. But again, just that idea of, man, figuring out some kind of visual imagery for those young men to say, okay, that makes sense. Another one I've done is 11 pencils. So I'll take a strong kid up in the room. I'll hand him a pencil. I'll say, hey, can you break this? Boom, I can break it. I'll hand him 2 pencils. Can you break that? Boom, I can break that. I'll hand him 3. Boom, he can break it. All right? And I'll hand him 11 pencils. And if you've ever tried, man, trying to hold on to 11 pencils and break him, it's nearly impossible. All right? So again, but I give him this example. So what do you pull away from this, right? What's the meaning from this? What's this bigger piece that we're trying to pull away from this that's so important, this life lesson? Just understanding all of us together is so powerful. Guys, other things we've done, I've done a father-son float trip. I've done a dad's barbecue. I've done different ways to incorporate the athletes with their dads, right? Just to help build that relationship. The float trip's great. We go down the night before. We do some fun games where the dads have to compete against their sons. And same with the dad's barbecue. The dad's barbecue is another event I've done where the fathers and the sons sit there and they eat, and I let the son tell the father about what he does in football, and that's super powerful. Again, same with Moms Football 101. I'll invite moms to come and then hang out with their and we do a little kind of mom's tea dessert thing, but then they go on the field and they get a chance to practice, and we let the sons run the practice, and that's a lot of fun, and those are great events. And again, guys, we make sure that we try to get every mom there, every dad there, every mom figure, dad figure there to help support those kids. But just a great way to, again, make it bigger than football, right? Help them see that character really played out. Help them see and allow them to have some leadership when they're getting to run that stuff. Kind of an interesting one that isn't really involved with the kids. I do a steaks and cigar night. So an idea I got a couple years ago was, you know what, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to invite dads to come and hang out, and we're going to do a steaks and cigars night. So the idea is, we get somebody to maybe donate or give us some, pork steaks. You kind of bring your own beverage. We sit around, and I just talk to the dads about what we're doing, right? And I talk to them specifically about their sons, what they're doing, and kind of what we're doing offensively, defensively, etc. But even more, I just try to help them understand what we're all about. I try to be transparent with them, like, hey, I love your son, I care about your son, here's what I want for your son, here's what we're looking for, kind of whether it be our character foundational piece, our pillars, etc. And again, I'm not saying you win the world over, and I'm definitely not saying you're going to change the character of the parents, but at least allows them to see who you are, see what you're all about, so they understand, hey, when they hear their son use the word empathy, hey, that must have been one of your words. We do a lock-in as well. It's a great thing to kind of end the summer, right? We found I've been, doing these for almost 15 years now, and I've loved them. They're a lot of fun. You can do a lot of different things, but we break them up into small teams. Again, allow those leaders to be in charge of those teams, and we do different fun activities and events. And I've got a whole list of events that we do, and after each event, we debrief it then with some questions about, hey, right, why did we do this? What this lesson we learned from, this weird basketball game that we played, how does that translate over to football? How does that translate over to life? But those lock-ins are huge. They're just great ways to allow kids to let the walls come down a little bit, right? But allow them to also teach a little bit about that character, empower some of your leaders to be leaders and lead those groups. But guys, again, just watching kids, and we've done different ones. We've done trivias, we've done putting puzzles together, blindfolded or not being able to talk, just a lot of different fun activities that you can do that just allow those kids to have a lot of fun. And also, I'd always recommend allow a lot of free time and a lot of food. Those always go a long way. Guys, bringing in a guest speaker, I know it's a challenge sometimes, right? Because you don't exactly know what you get when you get a guest speaker. But again, if you can get the right person to come in and speak, whether that be during a character meeting or during that be before the season or that be before a game or after a season, is so huge, right? Again, just a couple words of wisdom, a couple minutes of their time can go a long way, and they're just hearing it from somebody different. And that is so powerful, right? Because a lot of times, guys, I've noticed when I've been in a place a long time, you can just kind of sound like a resounding gong, right? It just doesn't really have that same impact. But them hearing it from somebody else can be huge. Again, like I mentioned, we allow our linemen to eat first. Sometimes we'll do it by position. We'll let our linemen always eat first, or we'll always let visitors eat first with us. Again, I think that's so key. Again, you do some kind of team meal, and the kids want to eat first, but we'll normally change that up, and we let new people eat first, just again to try to understand the idea of servant leadership. Right, and again, also to be grateful. Like the food will still be there, you're going to be okay. Again, also youth program clinics, right? Man, we try to do a lot with our youth because again, we want to show them what we're doing from a character and leadership standpoint as well as an X and O standpoint. We do create drill videos, but we also allow the players to be involved in the drill videos. They love that stuff. They love being in those drill videos. We have them come and help out with the camps, right? They naturally come in there and helping out with the camps. I'll have them speak to the young players as well. Again, just whatever you can do to get them an opportunity to be a leader, to demonstrate the character that you're wanting them to do. And as we say, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, right? Sometimes you just say, hey, man, I want you to talk about integrity, right? Talk about why this is important. And maybe that young man doesn't always show integrity, but hopefully he learns from this experience, man, I do need to talk about this. This is important stuff. Again, also, I invite those youth coaches to come to our practice and meetings. I want them around us. The more I think you can get everyone on the same page, the better. And I think that's really key, just as you're looking and trying to figure out how to incorporate those younger programs, not only into the X's and O's that you're doing, but also in the character and leadership stuff. So the next thing that I want to talk about, and kind of the last piece in this new frontier, is this idea of mental training. I think so character and leadership stuff is stuff that I've been really doing for a long time, and I really think it's important. But I thought it was so important as I studied this, just as I got so frustrated at some typical athlete responses when things got difficult, right? So I would call this lack of mental toughness. I know my wife got so tired of hearing me say, man, these kids just aren't very tough, or he's not very mentally tough, or the lack of ability to maintain focus, right? Or this fear of failure. Man, my goodness, I see so many kids, they're so afraid to fail so they won't even try. Or they shut down after mistakes, right? So they make a mistake and they just completely shut down. So during this, I just wanted to figure out how do we incorporate more sports psychology, how do we incorporate some more of this mental training just to allow our athletes to be able to move past these? Because you and I know mistakes are made, right? Mistakes are always made, and as those mistakes are made, and they're going to happen, we want to make sure that we allow those athletes an opportunity to work through that quickly, because that's a life skill as well. Been very blessed. I have a mentor of mine, Dr. Rick McGuire. He was the head track coach at the University of Missouri for, I think, 39 years. I got to take 2 graduate degrees with him and got to learn a lot of fun stuff from him. But what was neat was seeing how the University of Missouri football team was also trying to implement this stuff. And so that was really interesting. So I would go and I would talk to Dr. McGuire, and I'd be in these classes, and I would listen to Dr. Pat Ivey, the head strength and conditioning coach at the time at Mizzou, and I would listen to how he did it. And so, and I remember in 2013, right, we had talked about this, we had discussed it a little bit, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it. So in 2013, I took the phrase park it. So the idea with park it was when a mistake was made, like the only response that I allowed my athletes to use to that athlete was park it and then move on, right? That was the only thing. As coaches, that was all we could say. As athletes, that's all we could say. And it was really interesting because we did this during a 7-on-7 league. And I know at first when I told the guys what we were doing, they're like, okay, this sounds really silly, right? But again, so I just said, hey, that's what we're going to do. We're only going to say park and move on. And it was funny, by the end, guys got onto it, and they thought it was kind of cool, and so they kept saying, so kid would drop a pass, the quarterback, hey, don't worry about it, park it, move on. And that's all we said, right? And we had a lot of fun, and we played pretty well too. And again, guys, anytime you implement things, I'll admit, right, to reach critical mass, you have to be successful in it, right? And so it takes a little bit of time to figure out what you want to implement to be successful, but in this case, it worked. So in that year, 2013, I continued with the character meetings, right, that I was doing. I continued with the leadership stuff, but I started focusing on some intentional mental training during that time. So a couple things that we did, right? What can you control? What is your locus of control? That's a huge thing, right? Learning to control only certain things and focusing on those things instead of all the stuff in the peripheral. And guys, that's a huge life lesson as well, right? And as a coach, I'm sure you can understand that. Next, the thing I really started doing was I did a pregame visualization routine called the drive. So what I would do is I would turn the lights out really low in our meeting room before we went over into the locker room before the game, and I would just take them through a drive offensively and defensively on what I thought the game would look like. I'd encourage the guys to close their eyes, get in a relaxed state. I'd focus on their breathing. I would talk them through breathing, and I would just literally work them through maybe 5 or 6 offensive plays and a stop on defense. And it was interesting because sometimes the kids would fall asleep. Sometimes it was really relaxing, which you might think is funny before a football game. But again, it allowed them to go and play fast and to play free, right? Again, they were going to be fine. I always tell people don't typically for football don't have any problem getting amped up, right? It's being able to control themselves and get in the right mental state for the rest of the game before that opening kickoff. Also doing a lot of breathing control before games. I'd encourage guys. I could always tell, and again, I'm dating myself a little bit, you'd hear the metal cleats just tapping on the concrete, right? Just as guys are nervous. And so just really getting guys to calm themselves down before games, just to get themselves in that right level of what they needed. So those are some things we did in 2013. It worked out. We had a successful season, so that was great. So I kind of went on from there, how can I incorporate more of this stuff? And so what I have here is I just have a list, and I'm going to try to go through and talk you through some of these. And so you understand. Guys, this isn't by far the only list. I have other things that I do now, but really you've got to figure out what you can do, what's a nugget or two that you can do to use with your guys. So some new phrases that we use, right? So we had park it and move on, all right? Another one we use is 5 seconds, bro, let it go. The idea was that, hey, no matter if you just caught a touchdown pass or you just got sacked, right? No matter if you just got the big interception, right, or you missed a block, then the idea was 5 seconds, bro, let it go. And that's what the kids would use with each other to help remind them of that, right? Hey, you have 5 seconds, think about it, fume on it, get excited about it, and then let it go. We got the rest of the game to play. The second one was don't get hijacked. Don't get hijacked by your emotions. A lot of times our emotions, right, can ramp us way too up or way too down, and we got a whole game to play. So don't get hijacked. Hey, don't get hijacked, right? Just telling those guys, don't get hijacked by your emotions. Keep playing the game. Another one that I really liked is where are you? Right? So I'd ask the guys, where are you? And their response was right here, right now. Right? A lot of times we will focus on our past mistakes or we are worried about the future outcomes. But the key is we need to be right here, right now. And so we just tell the guys, hey, where are you? And their response needs to be right here, right now. And again, just a refocusing tool. Just something that allowed them to refocus and get themselves in that present moment. We had a chance in 2014 to play for a state championship. And I remember our guys walking into the dome there in St. Louis and just looking around. And you want to know the first question I asked them? Where are you? And they responded right here, right now. And again, just allowed them to refocus, allowed them to come back to center, and just allowed them to realize, hey, they're in a big stadium, right? But again, we're here to play football. We're right here, right now. Another great thing that I highly recommend is doing yoga. Now again, I'm not a yogi, all right? Look at this body. Not a yogi, don't want to see me in tights or spandex, right? But again, just helping kids understand that there's just a lot to breathing and stretching. And so again, about 5-6 years ago, I started just trying to lead yoga. So I'd watch some videos and then I'd try to lead it, all right? And there are times I figure out what works and what doesn't work. I've been lucky at the last school I've been at that I had a yoga instructor who would just volunteer her time, all right? And so with that though, we would do yoga typically at least once a week during the season and sometimes twice. And guys, it was great. It just allowed, we'd turn the lights down, allowed them to control their breathing, to settle themselves, to become very mindful. And again, it helped a lot with just stretching, flexibility, and reducing soreness after games. And that was huge. But guys, there's just so much in with yoga and what goes on with that, and just in terms of mindfulness and being present, just calming the mind, that's huge. The new thing that we did was during two-a-days, again, everyone has different rules on two-a-days and how they're used, but you have that time, right, where maybe you're not allowed to use any equipment for your sport or whatever. We do a thing called building the mind. And during that each day, I would teach on a different mindset principle, right? So this idea maybe of grit, or this idea of like a positive psychology or positive mindset, or like flow, or again, that idea of locus of control, what can you control? We also sometimes talk about nutrition or sleep and the importance of nutrition and sleep. And those are things, and we would just take, again, there'd be a little small meeting. You're talking maybe 15 minutes at most, because again, you'd have to go through each class or each group, but it wasn't long, right? It wasn't a long time, but it just allowed us an opportunity to sit there and just talk to these guys and teach them about that. And then hopefully something we can discuss more later with them, maybe throughout the practice or through that 2 days or throughout the season. You see up there AOIs. Guys, again, AOI stands for areas of improvement and strengths, right? But the key here is focusing on strengths. There's a lot of research out there that just shows the more we can help kids understand, right, that they're doing things well and focus on let's continue doing those things well, the more excited they are about practice, right? A kid can only hear so much about the negative stuff that they're doing. They want to hear positive stuff. And so we have coaches highlight what are some strengths that they are doing, right? What are some things they're doing well? And then that way those kids can remember to keep doing those. Again, increased character meeting, focus on mental training. Again, we talked a lot of emotional intelligence, right? Or that emotional quotient, that EQ, just trying to give them ideas. I know it sounds crazy. We've talked about different feelings, right? Because again, typically for young men, it's pretty normally happy, sad, angry, right? Those are kind of the three emotions, but there's so much more. So helping kids understand what does that look like. You can do some fun things where they have to pull emotions out of a bag, and they have to give like an example of when that was in their life or a funny story about that. Composure, arousal levels. So again, if you're familiar with it all, basically your arousal level or kind of how hyped up you get is kind of like a bell-shaped curve, if that makes sense. And so the idea is you've got to find that optimal level for you, and it's different for each person. Some guys need to get really amped up, right? And then some guys need to settle themselves down, right? Really amped up, you're going to take shorter breaths, and you got to teach kids about that. And if you want to calm yourself down, you got to take longer, slower, deeper breaths. But figuring out what works for you so you can get in that right level, and learning to almost do that during an entire game, right? Because it's really easy to get amped up before the game, but teaching young men, teaching your athletes, hey, how do I do this over the course of a game? Or how do I do this for the second half, right? How do I do this for the fourth quarter? How do I do this for this big drive that I need to make a stop, etc.? Another key one is positive self-talk. I mean, just helping young people aware that the things they say about themselves either hurt or help them. And that's really hard. It takes a lot of conversation about it, but again, just something to talk through with the young people, because again, they beat themselves up quite a bit, right? Sometimes they're their own worst critic. And so helping those young people understand that, coach them up on that a little bit, sometimes just giving them a buzz phrase they can say to themselves is key, but it's there. I think definition of success is enormous. Again, what does success look like? I always tell people, are you really going to let a big metal object with lights and wires determine whether or not you're successful? Right? That scoreboard does not totally determine success, because you and I know as coaches, there have been times we've played well and lost. There have been times we played bad and won. What does success look like? What is really, man, this big qualitative outcome on what we're looking for, right? On us getting better, improving throughout the season. But that's a really important conversation to have. Finally, we'll do characteristics of mentally tough people. We'll talk again about growth mindset. Guys, we'll talk just, again, that idea of positive psychology, being mindful, the power of the mind, those other things. And so those are all things that we'll talk through with those guys, just having different conversations. Again, there's great videos out there. There's funny YouTube clips, different things that you can teach kids about those things. But again, guys, all that mental training, you got to figure out how to find a place for it, right? And that's key, right? Because again, as you're looking at character, leadership, and mental skills development for your football program, you got to figure out how to do it. Now, my advice, and I don't have anything up here on the screen, right? but again, it's just figuring out what works for you, right? And again, guys, this is just an idea where you pick something out and work for it. Maybe you find one thing that fits for your program. But guys, this is the new frontier. The more you can figure out how to incorporate that character education, which I think can be done weekly, the more you can do that leadership stuff by doing things in the off season, providing them opportunities to lead, right? And then calling those leaders to help you out. And then finally, figuring out how to incorporate mental skills training, right? And just small nuggets. And then biggest thing, guys, with all of these is continue coming back to them, continue bringing them up so they, again, can see them and continue hearing them maybe from other people, the better it's going to be. Guys, I hope this was helpful for you. Again, I truly think this is where we're going, right? Guys are going to continue getting better with X's and O's, but eventually this is the area where we can really help gain an advantage on our opponents and also make a huge impact in our kids' lives. Again, thank you to Chief Pigskin for letting me do this. I'm so honored to be speaking in front of you. Hopefully you got something out of this. You can see my contact information down there at the bottom. I'm always here to help. And again, I'm going to continue learning. I can definitely learn from you. Please stay in contact. Thanks so much. Have a great football season.